with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. The world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, although we are in Miami today, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to chat about whatever it is we want to chat about. And tonight we are talking about Black people die by suicide too. Black people die by suicide too. There is actually an organization with that very name. And my very special guest, is the co-founder of that organization, Black People Die by Suicide Too. And so we are going to have an interactive conversation. But before I bring Ms. Jordan Scott on, my special guest tonight, I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? We are live on Facebook and on YouTube, Conversations with Nicole. And so we want to hear from you. Your comments, your questions are welcome. It is the second day of Kwanzaa Abaragani. For those of you who celebrate, Kuji Chagulia is the appropriate response, which is self-determination. And we are self-determined to talk about mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities. So again, we invite you to be part of this conversation. Tag a friend, let them know that they need to be on here. I see you, Iris Pendleton. Hello from Miami for the holidays and representing Tallahassee home. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a wonderful time here in South Florida, and have been definitely enjoying the family, the fellowship, the food, in this warmer weather. So I am very, very grateful. Thank you for joining us tonight, Iris. So I know we will have other folks on, but in the interest of time, I am going to go ahead and share my guest, Jordan Scott's bio with you. She is the Associate Director and co-founder of Black People Die by Suicide Too, a nonprofit dedicated to normalizing the conversation about suicide in the Black community. BPDBST is the acronym, provides education and resources that instill hope in Black people suffering from mental health conditions. Jordan lives with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. She was involuntarily hospitalized for suicidal thoughts during her last semester of undergraduate studies. And since that time, Jordan has worked extensively in the field of human services. She is passionate about mental health and is dedicated to reducing the stigma surrounding suicide, working alongside her co-founder and executive director, Takia Blackman. Y'all help me welcome Jordan Scott.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Yeah. So glad to have you. So y'all, I met Jordan off of Instagram. Y'all know that I'm in the search for Black mental health, Black and Brown mental health clinicians and advocates. And so when I saw Black people die by suicide on Instagram, I was like, I have got to have them on, somebody from this organization on, to be on the show to talk about it, because I feel like it's such an important topic, and there's so much, I think, misnomers and myths around Black people and suicide. So I am again, super excited that you are here with us tonight.
Yes,
So,
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
my pleasure. My pleasure. So, one of the things that I ask my guests is to, I know I just read some of your bio, your brief bio, but I ask my guests to tell me who are you in your own words, not what you do, but who are you?
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Scott. I am 33 years old. I am from the DMV. I'm a native Marylander. I live in Prince George's County. I've lived here pretty much all my life. Um, I am someone, as Nicole said, that lives with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And today I'm actually thriving. I've really come a long way. I'm someone who's been involved in clinical mental health treatment for 11 years now. It's been
Mm.
11 years since I was first committed to the hospital. And throughout my journey, I would end up being hospitalized 4 times. But I'm really, really grateful that I'm doing well today and excited to be here and talk a little bit about suicide in the Black community because it's something we definitely don't talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we are so glad that you are here with us today as well, and just having the courage, I think, to talk about your experience and the willingness to be, vulnerable and open and honest. So I really, really do appreciate that. So my mom is joining us. Hey, Ma. Thank you for being on. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And so I want to just read my disclaimer, especially since this topic is pretty heavy. But again, no less important than all of the rest. But and that disclaimer is that we should not be treating conversations with Nicole as counseling. Okay. This is just a conversation. All topics, past, present, and future, are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. So we definitely want folks to seek professional help as it relates to it. And, some of the topics that we talk about tonight may be triggering. So, I just want to make sure that folks are safe in, putting those skills, those coping skills in place as we go forth with this conversation. So, Jordan, if you don't mind, let's talk about, this name first of all. Black people die by suicide too, and how you and your business partner have come to create this organization and some of the things that you all do.
Yeah, so I am just one half of Black People Die by Suicide too. My co-founder and executive director is Takia Blackman, and we've been friends for some years now. We actually met in the hospital. Yes, we were
Okay.
hospitalized at the same time.
Okay.
We were both having suicidal thoughts. That's where we met. That's how we became friends. I think it was my last day in the hospital and her
Mm.
first day. And for some reason, she was like, before she leaves, I just have to get her number. So we exchanged numbers and we've been running ever since.
Wow.
So because we have that mutual, experience with suicidal ideation, um, again, I never had a suicide attempt, but Takia has.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been hospitalized multiple times for suicidal thoughts, and Takia most hospitalized for a suicide attempt, and then also lost her 13-year-old cousin to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about suicide and mental health all the time, like in our private conversations, just as friends throughout the
Mm-hmm.
years. And Takia actually came to me with the idea, I think January or February of last year, and she was like, I'm thinking about like starting a podcast just to talk about mental health and suicide in particular, because it's something that we don't talk about in the Black community. And she was like, do you want to do this with me? You just want to be a guest that comes on every now and again. And so I'm the quiet and reserved one of the two of us. And I'm like, no, I'll just be a guest that pops in from time to time. And she was like, no, you need to be on here with me. So we actually started off as a podcast. So
Okay.
Black People Die by Suicide 2, our first episode launched in May of 2023 this year. Takia's here. I'm sorry. Hi, Takia. That is the other half of Black People Die by Suicide 2. I had to shout you out because I saw you just popped in. Love you, sis.
Yes,
Um,
sir. Hey, Takia.
yeah, so we started off as a podcast and we went to the NAMI walk, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They had a walk in Baltimore City back in May, and people kept coming up to our table and saying, "Oh my God, this is great! Like, this is a great organization. Your organization, this, your organization, that." And we were like, "No, no, we're just a podcast." And people were so supportive. Takia and I just kind of looked at each other like, should we make this a nonprofit? And we filed
Mhm.
for the nonprofit and we got it in June. So we've only been around for what, 6 months and maybe like 12 days now.
Wait a
So it's
minute.
really, really exciting. We wanted to make sure that we did this because it's something that we don't talk about. I mean, it's bad enough trying to get Black people to talk about like mental health in general. I feel like
Mm,
it's become more acceptable to talk about it with the pandemic because we all kind of experience this collective sense of grief. So I feel like
yeah.
people have a better understanding of mental health issues and anxiety and depression overall now. But
Mhm.
suicide, listen, the name, we named this Black People Die by Suicide 2 for a reason. The name is blunt, the name hits you um, like cold water in your face. And the
Mhm.
reason why we did that is because there's so much stigma and all these thoughts that this is not something that Black people do. Like,
Mm.
only white people commit suicide. White people have that privilege. We as Black people, we always have to be strong, take care of everyone else.
Mm.
If you are thinking about suicide, there's something wrong with you. Did you pray about it? Did you? We were enslaved. If slaves could get through slavery, then what's wrong with you? So there's a lot of dismissive sort of thoughts around suicide in the
Mhm.
Black community. And we want to make it very apparent because Kia and I, we are both Black. And we have dealt with suicidal ideation.
Mhm.
So we just want to spread the message and raise awareness. And that's kind of how this was born.
Wow. So less than a year old,
Yes.
um, started as a podcast and then became a nonprofit organization. That
Mhm.
is amazing. And so let's talk about it. Let's dive in. And again, this is a safe space for us to communicate with one another. So to the viewers, whether you're live with us, real time, or you're watching the replay, again, feel free to put your comments, your questions into the chat. And so let's talk about that, right?
Mhm.
I am 20 years your senior. And growing up, you rarely heard of a Black person died by suicide, rarely.
Mhm.
And, even when you did hear of someone died by suicide, it was always kind of associated with something that only, European folks did, or, not non-melanated folks. And so
Mhm.
it just, I don't know. I guess because we didn't hear of it so much in the Black community, we thought that this just was something that we just didn't do.
Yes.
However, I think with the pandemic, with people, um, social distancing and all of that, a lot of things took place during that time in terms of our this the disruption of our daily lives, right?
Mhm.
And with the disruption of our daily lives, came now these maybe thoughts about our past experiences, thoughts about maybe some hopes, dreams, aspirations that had not been realized, maybe even some of our relationships that we were in and how we were relating with others. And we start really seeing suicide numbers go up, especially amongst Black youth. And so I, I just wanted to pause there and sit in that just for a moment, to for us to really think about kind of like what has taken place and where we are now, as it relates to it. And you can speak to that if you like, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there in terms of kind of, you know, to dispel this myth that Black people do not die by suicide, because we absolutely do.
Yes. So I think with suicide and mental health in general, but particularly suicide, there tends to be a lot of secrecy around it. I
Hmm.
mean, for instance, I have a relative on my mother's side who passed away. And for the longest time, I kid you not, I think he passed away in the late 90s. I always was told the story that he died in a car accident, him and his girlfriend and the mother of his son. But
Hmm.
in fact, it was actually suicide. I
Mm.
didn't learn this until what, 2000 or something. And when my
Hmm.
mother told me about it, the truth of what happened, I instantly burst into tears. I had
Oh,
no idea. So there's a lot of suicide, I think, that goes underreported. So people will
unreported.
let that person pass away from other things just out of
Hmm.
shame, or they don't want it to be associated with that. So I do feel like it's underreported anyway. But
Hmm.
suicide goes back a long, long way. I mean, there's a thought that, Black people, we were slaves. So what do you have to be depressed about? Slaves
Hmm.
most certainly died from suicide. And there's actually a really good book by Terry Snyder, The Power
Hmm.
to Die. You can check that out. I've bought my copy on Amazon, but she goes in depth about suicide that occurred during slavery,
Hmm.
from the time people were captured in Africa through the
Hmm.
transatlantic voyage to the time they got here. Suicide was a way of almost like reclaiming your freedom in a situation, like your autonomy over yourself, as
Hmm.
opposed to someone's property. So even back then, I read in the book that sometimes when slaves would end their own lives for a multitude of reasons, a lot
Hmm.
of slave masters would actually hide the reason why that person died, because
Hmm.
they wouldn't be able to get like the insurance right off on them.
Right.
So that's kind of like how this idea of hiding people dying from suicide goes back a long, long way. So if you ever have someone tell you that we didn't die from suicide way back in slavery, that's not true. It's been something that's been hidden and kept hush in our community for a long time, either through the will of ourselves or when the slave master just didn't want it. He wanted to recoup his money because we were his property. And how dare we rob him and deprive him of his property?
That is an interesting point. I have heard of enslaved Africans, through the transatlantic voyage, you know, jumping off the ships or what
Mhm.
have you. I had not heard about the insurance record keeping, and them not getting, full benefit, if you will, because of a suicide death as opposed to some other death. So that's pretty fascinating. We do have a few folks that are chiming in, so I do want to recognize them. Lisa Thompson, who's in Tallahassee, thank you for joining us. She said, especially with mental health, like my son who is schizophrenic. Yes,
Mhm.
Lisa. And I saw a post that you did recently regarding your son. And so, yeah, it is, mental health and wellness is a spectrum, right?
Mhm.
Which can, on the milder end could be like anxiety, depression, that sort of thing. And on the more severe or chronic end could be like schizophrenia. And I will say that I have definitely found especially in maybe not so urban areas, that the resources for folks that are on the more chronic end or more extreme end of mental illness are few and far in between, or very, very expensive. And so, you really have to be an advocate. And I know you have been, Lisa, for your son, who, has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so that is very important. I've run across a few other folks in Tallahassee specifically that have loved ones with schizophrenia. And it's been tough because there really aren't a whole lot of resources in our area, in the Tallahassee area, to treat people with that diagnosis. And so you can get treatment, but again, it's very, very expensive. So again, Lisa, just keep fighting the good fight, and doing what you're doing to assist your son as best you can. Iris said, I remember being shocked when a very popular guy from my high school committed suicide during young adulthood. It just didn't make sense. Also, a son of a well-represented church member lost a son to suicide. I didn't have the tools or language to talk about this back then, so I'm grateful for this conversation. Absolutely, Iris. I will also say that, so the language has also changed in terms of us saying committed suicide, because the idea of someone committing suicide, there's a guilt, shame, and that sort of thing. So now the term is die by suicide. And so, I'm glad you're on here as well. And hopefully this will assist, as we move forward in this life, and maybe our task with assisting somebody that may have suicidal ideations, or talk about wanting to die, or wanting to end their life. And so I'm glad again that you're on here. We're having this conversation. So, Jordan, if you don't mind, just can you tell us a little bit about your experience in
Mhm.
terms of, you said you've been hospitalized because of some of your suicidal thoughts and that sort of thing, not attempts but thoughts, but just if you don't mind sharing some of kind of your experience, and how you kind of move past those thoughts and feelings, and have are now moving on to thriving, right? Because that's what you said. You said you're thriving now. So tell us how about your experience and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so a lot of my underlying issues that sort of caused me to end up with the mental health diagnosis, they all pretty much happened during childhood for me. Again, I grew up in the DMV with myself, my father, my mother, who were married, and my older brother. And two-parent household, we were middle class. In the very beginning, everything was great. Like I remember some of my fondest memories going down to the DC waterfront, sitting by, the Potomac River and Anacostia River, just hanging out with my family by the monuments. My father loved to go there. And it wasn't until I got to maybe like first or second grade that my parents started to argue. It was definitely a loveless marriage, and it
Mm,
was tough. I remember, I'll never forget very distinctly, my father and my mother worked opposite shifts. So my mom worked during the day and my father worked in the evening from 2 to either 10 or midnight. I think he stopped working at 10. And so we would only see my father for the most part on his days off. And his days
mhm,
off were Fridays and Saturdays because if he was home, he was asleep. We were up. So, we didn't see him that much, even though he was right there in the house with us. He was always resting. But my father's days off were Fridays and Saturdays. And let me tell you something. When I tell you the Scott house would be jumping on Fridays and Saturdays just between
mm,
like the way they would be arguing. I remember Thursday nights or Thursday evenings when I got home from school. I knew
Mhm.
that I had to make sure I got all my cleaning done, make sure I got the bathroom clean, my room clean, whatever needed to be clean, because I was going to be holed up in my room
Mhm.
until Sunday came and my father went back to work because it was just a lot. So
Mm.
that happened pretty much my entire childhood. But also, once I got to about the age of 8 or so, I
Mhm.
remember that I had developed pretty early. I got breast really early, got my cycle early,
Mm.
and my father, his vices were cigarettes, alcohol, and pornography. So my father was always sexually inappropriate, for lack of
Mm.
a better term.
Mhm.
And with it being, again, a loveless marriage, I developed early. So my father started to take like this odd, um, I don't know, inappropriate sort of sexual interest in me. So I
Mm.
had those things happen. And I remember about three specific incidences that are just burned into me at this point.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was also a thing that led to me ended up with depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
Gosh.
But I think the worst thing that ended up happening in my childhood was my father passing away. This was in 2008. It was my last year of high school. I was getting ready to graduate. And I remember that April, my father had stepped away from work. He got short term disability
Mm.
and we didn't know what was going on.
Mm.
Um, he just stopped working. And from the time he stopped to the time he died, my father went from looking like himself
Mm.
to basically being a skeleton.
Mm.
And it happened very, very quickly. I ended up graduating in May of 2008, and my father was too sick, so he didn't come. And then 2 weeks later, he ended up dying from lung cancer. We had no idea he had cancer. That was just
Oh, wow.
everything was a complete shock. So I'm sorry, my brother was home. My mother and I were out of state. I was
Mhm.
actually getting ready to go to my undergraduate orientation in Atlanta. So I went to school at Georgia State University in downtown Atlanta.
Mhm.
And we got the call from my brother that he had passed away.
Mm.
And he, we ended up coming home the next day. And I kid you not, this was back when, like, we had those big box TVs with the big back. So you had to get like the big cabinet to put your TV in.
Yes. Yes.
So we had one of those big like cabinets that held your TV, and your DVD player and all that. And I would never forget that. The very top of it, there was like, I don't know, probably 30, 40, 50 medication bottles. I have never known my father to take medication. I have no idea where he hid all this medication. I believe he was sick for a very, very long time. The cancer
Mm.
was terminal. There was nothing he could do. He
Yeah.
hid that from us so well.
Mm.
And when he died, it was absolutely devastating to me. I didn't care about any of the arguing. I didn't care about him touching me. I didn't care about any of that. Like that was my father.
Yeah.
And we ended up having the service for him, burying him. And then I didn't really have much time to stick around and grieve because I left for Atlanta in
Mm.
August. He died in June.
Wow.
And I had a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms in undergrad that I'm aware of now, but didn't realize back then.
Mhm.
So the very, very end of undergrad is when everything just kind of came to a head. I was angry at my mom about something, God knows what. And I told her what happened between me and my father.
Mhm.
And it's like once you say that, you can't take it back. It was like Pandora's box just burst open.
Mm.
And I started to see a therapist in Atlanta. But at the time, I was on my mom's commercial insurance. And I will never forget that to see like your primary care doctor or a medical doctor, the copay
Mhm.
was like $10. But for me
Mhm.
to see a therapist every time, the copay was $85. I still can't figure out what that was all about back then, but I think the rules have changed for mental health and they try to equate it a bit more to physical health. So the copays are better now. But back then, those
Mm.
copays used to be crazy. So I
Yeah.
couldn't afford to pay $85 every time I had to go see her. So I stopped seeing her maybe after 2 or 3 sessions. And when school started back up in August, this will be my end up being my last semester
Mm-hmm.
to go to the clinic at my undergraduate school. And I was seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And I remember one night I was living in an apartment by myself at this point, and I had a knife. I don't know, I just felt so depressed, like everything was just falling down on me. And
Mm.
I went to my kitchen and I got a knife from the butcher block, and I was going to slit my wrist and be done with it. But for whatever reason, I didn't end up doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for me, I had an appointment with my psychologist the next day. So I went and spoke with her and told her what happened. And she was like, oh, uh, okay. So she ends up consulting with the psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
and she says, we think you should go to the hospital. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I'm gonna go home. I'll pack a bag. I'll get my stuff together, and I'll go to the hospital first thing tomorrow morning. And they were like, yeah, no, it's not going down like that. You need to go to the
Mm-mm.
hospital right now. So
Right.
I didn't want to go. Um, but I ended up being involuntarily committed, and I was
Mm-hmm.
taken to the west side of Atlanta in the back of a squad car. And that's
Mm.
how the whole mental health journey really sort of kicked off. So I ended
Gotcha.
up in the hospital, and I did inpatient for 72 hours. I ended up
Mm.
converting over from involuntary status to voluntary status because I really did want help. So
Okay.
I did that, and I went to school at the same time I went to the hospital. I would go to the hospital on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I would go to
Mm-hmm.
school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I ended up graduating from the hospital program in November and
Okay.
graduated with an undergraduate degree in December. I don't know how I did it. I'm gonna have to give it to God because that was a lot, but I did it. And that's kind of what jumped off this whole thing. I would go on to be hospitalized 3 additional times, but they were all voluntary. Because when
Okay.
things got too rough for me, I was always the type of person to say, whoa, like I need somebody to help me sort this out. I don't want to die. So I would just go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I would do inpatient one more time, and then I did outpatient twice more. And then one of
Okay.
them is how I ended up meeting Takia. That was the last one that I went to, and that was
Gotcha.
over 5 years ago. So that's how it all started for me.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's not unlike others who have gone through something similar or even more severe, but you just don't know how some of these experiences will affect you, right?
Hmm.
And what, you know, some of your thoughts may be as it relates to how to cope and deal with those things. So just real quick, we got a couple of comments, and I want to acknowledge Barry X at Lord have mercy, yes, and Brother Quasi, who is based in Atlanta, said peace and blessings to the community. Thank you for being on, my brother. So we are a little more than halfway through our talk. So for those of you who are just joining us, I am on with Jordan Scott, co-founder of Black People Die by Suicide 2, which is a nonprofit organization that started off as a podcast, but it's all about having conversations around suicide and Black folks. And so Ira said, I think it's powerful knowing when you need help and then seeking the appropriate help. Absolutely. So, did you have any thoughts about where to go and that sort of thing? Even, after your first time, did
Hmm.
I guess in the hospital, they treat you, they, evaluate you, they're observing you. Um, did you feel like you were getting the best care while you were there?
You know what? I can honestly say that all of my mental health hospitalizations were positive experiences for the most part, with the exception of one for
Hmm.
me.
Okay.
Um, I'm hesitant to say that treatment is a lot what you make of it,
Okay.
because there are some experiences that you may have in an inpatient, even an outpatient setting that may be off-putting to you.
Hmm.
I think even just being involuntarily committed in and of itself is a traumatic experience. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to be lost when you're forced to go into the hospital. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, do you have insurance? Will your insurance cover you being in the hospital? Do you have a job? Are you able to take off 3+ days? Do you have a job that gives you PTO where you can afford to miss 3+ days of being in the hospital? Um, and it's especially a slap in the face if you end up being committed to the hospital, you didn't want to go, and then you get out, discharged, and a couple weeks later you start getting all those bills. That's the
Mm-hmm.
worst part. It's like, I didn't even want this treatment, and y'all are sending me these bills. You get the hospital bill, the doctor bills, all sorts of things. So there's a lot that goes into going into the hospital. But I will say that I had very, very positive experiences. And some of that did depend on me and the fact that I really did want help and I really did want to, sort through and get to the bottom of my issues. So I would say I would say my experience was definitely helpful. I don't regret any time that I actually had gone into the hospital.
Okay.
When I wasn't in the hospital, I always had a therapist. I've had a therapist almost consistently for 11 years now.
Okay.
I've had to switch therapists for different reasons, but I've
Mm.
always had that support. I've been on and off mental health medications for various reasons.
Okay.
But I always had a therapist or corner just to even talk to. And that's been instrumental in keeping me well, um, even being outside of the hospital. I have a
Gotcha.
therapist now. I'm going to meet with her tomorrow morning. I'm looking forward to that. So I think, yes, treatment really is what you make of it, but I fully acknowledge that there are some people that have some pretty traumatic experiences, and I've heard some tough things about treatment.
Gotcha. All right. We got Lisa Herring Jones on with us, and she said admitting you need help is a huge step to healing.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it definitely helps if you're on board. Um, I know with the things that fall under behavioral health, mental health, and substance use is a little bit different. Because with mental health, you kind of have that leeway to get people into the hospital for their own benefit, even if they don't want to go. But it
Hmm.
doesn't work like that on the substance use side. Everything is pretty much completely voluntary.
Yeah.
And have a problem or admitting that something is wrong, especially on the substance use side, is usually the first step to recovery.
Yeah.
Um, and it definitely helps if you're more receptive to treatment.
Hmm.
Because I've seen people in the hospital that were resistant to it, and a lot of times that only just prolongs. So I learned very quick to just be cooperative, but
Yeah.
luckily for me, I always found it helpful. I always had positive experiences, but I know that's not the case for everybody.
Indeed. Indeed. No, that's great. Did you have any support from your family or
Oh
family
yeah.
friends?
So, well, gosh, what are the things that I heard? Have I prayed?
Mm,
Um, again, we were slaves, so what's wrong with you? I come from a family of very strong women on my mother's side. And here comes Jordan being the complete opposite of all the things that I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be strong. I was supposed to
mm,
be resilient. I was supposed to suck it up, help
mm,
everybody out, don't show any emotions, don't cry, don't
mm.
just always be strong. And I feel like that's common for us in the Black community anyway, because we are a very resilient people. I'm not taking that away from us at all. But we're human. We have emotions. Like, we experience a wide range of emotions. We can't
Mm,
always be fine and good. You know what I mean? Things happen to us.
absolutely.
We feel sad. People sort of look down on mental health as if it's different from physical health. Because
Mhm,
if I would have told my family that I had cancer, no one would have come up to me and said, "Oh, did
mhm,
you wouldn't have got cancer if you've been praying," or uh, you know, what's wrong with you? Like, you're weak, or cancer would have been some moral failure or something on my part, that wouldn't have happened. That conversation wouldn't have happened. People would have
Right.
prayed for me. They would have took me to the oncologist. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of don't tell your people, don't tell them people our business. What
Mm-hmm.
happens in this house stays in this house.
Right.
Things are supposed to stay in the family. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that I got out of that because I feel like that's been very helpful for me. And even just telling my story and seeing people in the chat being receptive to it, um, it's such a powerful thing because we it's almost like we're programmed to keep things hidden and keep things in. Don't let
Yeah.
people see you sweat. Don't
Mm,
appear weak.
right.
But this gives me tremendous strength being able to tell my story and help other people. So
Indeed. And people are very receptive to it. Like Kim Dawkins, who says, "Thank you for having this conversation and sharing your story. Truly appreciate the bravery and honesty. I'm not there yet." And that's okay, Kim. But we appreciate you being on tonight and tuning in and just even sharing this comment with us. We really do appreciate it. Marlene, man, my friend down in Miami, she says, "I personally knew two Black men who died by suicide within the past 3 years. Oh, our
mm,
sincere condolences. The second one just last month, from what I was told, no known mental health issues, but a sudden triggering event in both cases." Wow.
mhm,
Again, why it is so important to have those coping skills, those coping mechanisms and techniques that you can, depend on, lean on when you find yourself in a crisis or a triggering event or experience that takes place, to help you get through some of that. Iris said, "Being able to admit that you need help is strength. Strong people are aware of their needs. You are strong," she said. "You are strong." Thank you for that, Iris. Yes, 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 yes. So thank you all for your comments, because again, this is not a easy topic, but it is definitely one worth exploring and flushing out, because you mentioned a number of things, and I was writing down the things that you were saying it about, Black people, this whole persona of us having to be strong and not show emotion and not cry and keep these secrets of whatever happens in my house stays in my house, and pray. And not saying that prayer does not work. I absolutely believe that it does, but
mhm,
counselors, therapists, and sometimes medicine works as well. In medicine, I mean prescription medicine, not some illicit street drugs, but like medicine that is meant to help the issues that you're facing from a mental health standpoint. So, all of these things we hear as Black folks, and we really need to do away with some of these things because they are really not serving us well at all. We got Marva Wallace on, one of my high school classmates. Thank you for being here. She said, "This conversation has been a blessing. Thank you." You are so welcome, Marva. So, all right. So tell me how you have gotten to where you are. I know you mentioned, kind of being on medication on and
mhm.
off for various sundry reasons. You've been doing therapy for 11 years, and it's probably a combination of that, but also you, like, how are you combating like these thoughts now?
I think it's really important to be, I guess, in tune with the signs that things may not be going well for you.
Hmm.
So, some of the things that I think people should pay attention to that may indicate someone is considering suicide. So, any threats of, you know, wanting to end their life, um, definitely if they want to hurt themselves, the person may be giving away prized possessions that just seems weird. Like if someone wanted to give you, I don't know, their class ring and they love this ring and they just feel compelled to give it to you all of a sudden and they say something like maybe I'm not going to need this where I'm going. That's when you kind of need to like ask some follow up questions like, well, where are you going or what's happening that you won't need this anymore?
Mhm.
People that are agitated or present in a way they wouldn't normally present. Maybe they're sleeping more. Maybe they've expressed that they feel a sense of hopelessness or that they won't be able to go on. Some of the things you should definitely pay attention to. Um, Sometimes it is sudden, but for many of us, we've wrestled with suicidal ideation on and off chronically for many, many years, as was the case for me.
Mhm.
Um, I so one of my biggest things is being aware of the signs. So, for example, I know that this time of year is a triggering time of year for me. Right after the
Mm.
holidays, going into the new year, this is when I will typically become very, very depressed. And I'm trying to stay on top of it ahead of time.
Mhm.
And it's just because it's a new year. I feel like I'm a person that's very behind in life at the age of 33 just because of my mental health struggles. I wasn't able to be as productive in my 20s as I would have liked to be. Like, I wish I could have been the me now 10 years ago, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's just not how things worked out.
Mhm.
So last night, I almost felt like I was going to have a bit of an anxiety attack. Um, and I couldn't quite place it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this coming from? It's been a while since this happened to me. But I looked at
Mhm.
the date and it's just getting closer and closer. Almost like my
Mhm.
body remembers this time of year and it's like getting revved up for something. So I whipped out my journal and I started journaling. I started
Okay.
writing down all the things that I wanted to talk to my therapist about tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
Um, so really being aware of patterns. So for me, January is definitely that time. June, which is the month my father passed away, is definitely that time.
Mhm.
That's been really helpful for me. Then I also picked up some really, really good coping mechanisms from being in treatment for so long. So one
Mhm.
of my favorite things to use is a thought record. You can actually find them on therapistaid.com. I'm pretty sure they have the one on there where it'll teach you how to use it, but it kind of retrains your mind to process different situations. Like if I can control the way I feel about a situation, I can control the way I react to that
Mhm.
situation. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques
Yeah.
that I've been using. Um, so I
That
think it's really just
That cognitive triangle, let me and just interrupt you just real quick.
mhm,
That cognitive triangle is powerful. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it is the way the triangle work is that your thoughts, which are at the top, control your feelings or your emotions, which control your behaviors and your actions. So if you want to change your behaviors and actions, you got to change your thoughts. Right. So it's a whole triangle. So yeah, but I've never heard of a thought record. So that is pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to definitely look that one up.
yes, I'll email you the link to it. I should be able to find one on Therapist Aid. But I actually started using those from one of my outpatient hospitalization programs. They taught me how to use it. And at first I was like, what? But the more I did it, the more I make sense the more it made sense to me. So I can view a stressful situation from a more balanced point of view because I
Gotcha.
dealt with a lot of cognitive distortion. So these are things like black and white, all or nothing. Like you're
Hmm.
either this
Yep.
or you're that. It's going to
Yep.
be this way or it's going to be nothing at all. I did a lot of definitely look up cognitive distortions because that
Yeah.
was something I really struggled with. But now I can see things from a much more balanced point of view. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, the world is not as doom and gloom as I thought it was. And it's
Yeah.
really helped impact my mental health in a positive way.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. All right. Iris said yes. Knowing and understanding your triggers is so helpful. Indeed, indeed, indeed. And we got Mr. Marcus Boston on, author in Tampa, Florida. Thank you for being on with us, Marcus. So, yeah. I mean, it goes back to I always am talking about these coping skills, right? Coping skills, techniques, tips, things that you can do. And I'm gonna repost this. I have a 99 coping skills list that I post from
Mm,
time to time. That there are a bunch of things on there. Probably quite a few that we use, but then there are a whole bunch more that we don't even probably think of using, but they can definitely be very helpful in these types of situations. So we got Lisa Paget Hughes on. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. All right. So you mentioned anniversary of maybe tragic events.
mhm,
When you really are speaking about self-awareness, which I think we all could stand to do like a really better job at being self-aware and kind of like checking in with our bodies and with our thoughts, and that helping us to kind of be in a bit more of a better control and not
mhm.
allow these thoughts and feelings to kind of overtake us, right?
Right.
And so, like, check in with yourself, like from time to time, especially if you feel like, you are having an anxiety attack, a panic attack, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling really, really low, like, feel what you're feeling, but then like check in and be like, why am I feeling this? Like, ask yourself the whys behind all of that, right? Lisa said, "Good evening. I am the author of Suicide. It Happens in Black Families Too. I am a mental health wellness coach with personal experience." Thank you, Lisa. So I believe a mutual friend of ours, who actually, and I meant to tell this to you, Jordan, before we got on, Audrey, texted me a copy of the book earlier today, and I asked her to invite you to come on the show, and so I'm so glad that you are here. And if you don't mind, Lisa, sharing with us a little bit about your experience and also how we can connect with you in terms of the book. Are you familiar with the book, this book, Jordan? Suicide, It Happens in Black Families Too?
You know what? I am not, but I was so excited to see that. I'm definitely going to write that down, Lisa. I'm sure I'll be picking up your book. Um, Definitely, it just makes me so happy that people are willing to have like to put themselves out there and have that conversation. And it
Yeah.
also makes me excited to see that you're a person with lived experience. So one of the
Mm.
things that also kind of helped me mature in my mental health journey was being involved in peer support.
Mm.
So peer support specialists, we go by lots of different names. Peer support specialists, peer recovery coaches, um, peer recovery specialists, just all sorts of different names. But we're
Mhm.
essentially people that have lived experience with either a mental health disorder, substance use, or both. And we
Mhm.
take our experiences in recovery in combination with usually training and a credentializing process. And we
Mhm.
help people that are currently struggling and currently in the midst of their mental health issue or addiction,
Mm.
and it's a powerful thing because we sort of bridge the gap in between the person who is looking for services and, say, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a
Mhm.
clinical mental health professional. Because a lot of professionals that are licensed, they don't, it's unethical for them to actually share like life experiences with patients or clients or whoever they're providing service to. But we as peers, we're able to really connect with them on that level when it's appropriate to do so. And we're
Mhm.
able to reach people that otherwise wouldn't necessarily be amenable to treatment because it's coming from an authoritative figure like a doctor or a
Mhm.
nurse.
Mhm.
So being someone that has lived experience has been um, instrumental in helping a lot of people. So I'm really happy that more people with personal experience are actually coming out and talking about what's going on with them. And you don't
Yeah.
have to be somebody with direct lived experience. You could be like someone who had a loved one who experienced a mental health challenge or
Mm.
addiction. All of our stories are valuable and they really go a long way in helping people find treatment.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So we got quite a few comments on Marcus. Thank you for sharing. He said I was suicidal at one time. I'm so glad I made it through that season, and we are too, Marcus, because you are cranking
Yes.
books out, and the world needs these books that you are writing. We got Lisa here in Jones. She said thanks for sharing this information. Lisa, sorry that I didn't get the notice early. It's okay, Lisa. We are so glad that you are here now. And she also mentioned, I think she was responding to your comment. She said, exactly, that's why I am a mental health wellness coach. And
Yes.
Lisa Harry Jones said, yes, safe assessment. I like that, Nicole. Check-ins. Yes, absolutely. And then someone just texted me and who is watching and said that we must learn how to check the danger in our thoughts, like we are
Mm,
warned about the danger of strangers. This is difficult because intellectual development is not included in educational development. Right.
yes.
Yeah, actually, I
Yep.
think emotional development.
Yes.
So, mhm, mhm,
I agree.
mhm,
I think a lot of people, even in the way we practice sort of talking about how we feel on a day-to-day basis, someone comes up to you and they say, "Hey girl, how you doing?" What are we gonna say? "I'm fine. I'm good." So a
mhm.
lot of us don't really end up, and I guess that's also out of politeness or nicety, like it's the expected answer. But a lot of us aren't, we don't have that language to really like talk about what's really going on with us. So I
Mhm.
know there are tools out there like
Yeah.
the feeling wheel
Yes.
that are really, really helpful if people are
Yes.
interested in, you can
Yes.
take your basic emotions, sad, mad,
Mhm.
uh, happy, and really break those down. And that's kind of
Yes.
how you build up your emotional language because it's
Absolutely.
powerful when you're able to give those things words. And how
Absolutely.
can you be aware of something that you don't even have, you can't even name it? That makes it
Mhm.
harder. So it's important for us to be aware of our thoughts. And I think it's also important to take into consideration that I've been in treatment for a long time now. And there
Mhm.
are people out there who have never had any type of, I guess, formal mental health treatment. So they may
Mhm.
be very, very early on in their journey. They may
Mhm.
not be able to give words to how they're feeling, or they might not even be able to, they might not even be willing to enter treatment at this time. But there are other resources out there that can help them. So, for example, there are lots of peer support groups. So these are things like NAMI meetings, the National Alliance on
The mental.
Mental Illness.
Mhm.
They have their support groups for people that are struggling with their mental health. They also have a support group for family members of
Yes.
and friends of those who are struggling with their mental health. Depression
Mhm.
and Bipolar Support Alliance has a group. Um, the Wildfire Alliance has a group. Like with that by suicide too. We also just started a peer recovery group last year. We're
Which
going
is
to do it
awesome.
every month.
Mhm.
Yes, for people that are struggling with suicidal thoughts, we're trying to create a safe space where people will feel comfortable talking about suicidality because it's not something that we talk about. And I mean, there's even 12-step meetings that are more geared toward mental health. Like we all know Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's for
Mhm.
people on the addiction side, but there's Emotions Anonymous that I've been to before, and I found that to be helpful. So there's a
Okay.
lot of resources out there for people who aren't necessarily ready to dive into, let's say, a therapist or meeting with a doctor, maybe they want to be on medication. There's a lot of
Got
different treatment modalities that you can try initially. And even being in those settings and being around people who are talking about their mental health and their experiences will also kind of help build up
it.
someone's ability to really get in tune with how they're feeling. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of power in realizing that you're not the only person going through this. Because if you're
Mhm.
anything like me, especially as Black people, we hold things in. So you're
Mhm.
thinking like, hold up, why am I struggling? Like I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. This has to just be me. No, there's a lot of us out there, and there's a lot of power in finding connection. And that's one of the things that I think Takia and I really take a lot of
Yeah.
pride in is like finding connection and finding your tribe because those things are so powerful for positively impacting your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
That,
Takia is still here, but if she is, if you want to pop something in the chat, girl, go ahead.
yeah, no, this has been good, and I've been taking notes. So yes, there's power in finding connection and finding
Yes,
your
yes.
tribe. Absolutely. Lisa said, great comment. We need to be educated on how to communicate true, authentic feelings. And yes, the feelings wheel is a great tool. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, she said, no, you're doing great, Fred.
Thank you. For all the people who are just tuning in, Takia Blackman is my other half. I say my better half of Black People Die by Suicide too. So she's also here. Thank you. I appreciate your
It
support.
is.
I
It is.
also think that it's important that we talk about like suicidal thoughts don't always and uh they don't always present the same for everyone, but that's not really what I mean. What I mean to say is that all suicidal thoughts are serious, but not all of them are necessarily an immediate emergency. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like passive and active suicidal thoughts. I definitely wanted to touch on that. So people that have passive suicidal thoughts is pretty much what I've experienced. So these are your thoughts like, oh, it would be so much better if I wasn't here anymore, or my family would be better off without me. Um, I wish I could die so that the pain will stop. That's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize with suicide. It isn't so much that the person wants to die. None of us are truly committed to our death. We just want the pain to stop. And up
Mm,
until that point, all things that we try to alleviate the pain with hasn't worked. And so
mm,
it makes sense that one would feel like suicide and ending their life is the only way out because emotional pain is
mm-hmm.
probably it's on par with physical pain for sure. It is deep, it is cutting. There have been many, many nights that I've sat with my means of ending my life in my hand, but for whatever reason, I just never went through with it. But if you had to count the number of times that I would probably be dead, I'm sure it's dozens of times over. So
Mm,
emotional pain is a lot.
yeah.
So those are some of the passive thoughts. For active thoughts, these are more things that like someone has a plan, the means to go through with that plan, and the intention to go through with that plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that person may say, "Oh, I want to end my life by way of firearm." That isn't necessarily an emergency either, but if that person has a firearm at home plus ammunition and they have the will to go through with it, or they don't feel like they can keep themselves safe, that's when it becomes like suicide is an immediate emergency. So a lot of
Mm,
people are afraid to tell someone that they have suicidal thoughts because the reaction is often, oh my gosh, panic. Like, let me call 911. Let me tell the police to come see you. And sometimes it's not always that. Sometimes we just want someone to listen to us. Sometimes
mm,
it's that simple. Sometimes we just want people to hear our pain or a safe space to give voice to that pain.
mm-hmm.
Um, and that really goes a long way in suicide prevention. So it's
Yeah.
important to kind of, really listen to what the person is saying when they're talking about their suicidal thoughts. Because if someone's being um, assessed for suicidality, the therapist is going to look for those three things. Either does that person have a plan? Does the person have the means to go through with the plan?
Mm-hmm.
And um, what's their intent? Are they able
Mm,
to keep themselves safe? So
gotcha.
the person who wants to die by suicide through means a firearm, who has the gun at home and is ready to go, is very different from someone like, let's say, I live in Maryland. I want to die by suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. I would have
Mm-hmm.
to travel all the way to California. So my means, my plan isn't immediately accessible to me. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not as so much a crisis as the person who has the means to go through with it and a very quick turnaround. So this is just some of the things I thought I would want to
No, no,
expand on.
that's that's good. I mean, we need to hear that.
Mhm.
Active versus passive,
Passive.
and
Hmm.
um the plan, the means to carry it out, and as well as a safety plan. So again, that's some of the language. We talked a little bit about language earlier, so that is very important. Takia said, yes, many times I called Jordan just to share those dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts specifically. And that's good that you have somebody that you are comfortable, Takia, sharing those thoughts with, that again, that's not going to judge you, that's not going to discount maybe what you're saying, or even overreact, because that's also part of it as well. And she further said, I don't always need to go to the hospital, just a safe space to talk. Yes. And so I
And I,
think that is also very important. I talk to a lot of people. I'm a talk show host, I'm a conversationalist, and I find that a lot of times people just need to be heard. Like, they need to get these thoughts out of their head. And I am a person that does hold space for people. So I really do get that. So yes, they just need a safe place to talk.
yes, and I think for people that want to provide support to others, um, I completely understand why people would have that reaction because suicide is something that we don't talk about. And often when we do talk about it, it's in reaction to someone dying. So I
Mm,
completely understand why people panic when they hear it. But
yeah.
there's a lot of trainings out here, if people are interested in taking them, that will sort of help you navigate like how to deal with those situations if someone does come up to you and they feel safe enough to tell you that they're experiencing suicidal thoughts. So that's like mental health first aid, QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer. They
Yes.
have youth mental health first aid. There's a
Yes.
lot of different things that you can take. The Wildflower Alliance has a training too. I think theirs is called Alternatives to Suicide. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different trainings that people can take if they want to sort of learn how to safely assess someone. Mind you, your job isn't really to keep that person from dying because ultimately that's too much pressure on you.
Mhm.
Basically, your job would be to assess that person for suicide risk and then get them connected to someone who can help.
Yes.
And a lot of these trainings do teach you how to do that. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my gosh, it's my responsibility to keep this person from hurting themselves.
Mhm.
That's a lot of pressure. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. I sure am not. I
Right.
don't have a MD. I don't have a LCPC or anything.
Mhm.
I'm a person who's a peer. I'm a person with lived experience, and I'm still able to help others. So don't ever feel like because you're not licensed that you can't positively impact someone's life and at least help keep them stay on this earth a little bit longer. Because if I can do it, you can do it too. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
trainings that'll teach you how to do that.
So very well said. I'm so glad you mentioned all of those things, Jordan. I have had personal experience with QPR, with youth mental health first aid training. And those are some services that I can only speak for Tallahassee, are provided in Tallahassee via the Mental Health Council of the Big Bend, as well as there's a black men's mental health work group that I'm a part of as well. And
Mm.
actually recently put on a youth mental health first aid training in Tallahassee, and are planning several of those in 2024, both youth and adult. And we're working on getting somebody trained to do teen mental health first aid training. So, definitely tap into those resources. QPR, we've done that as well a couple of times via Dr. Anika Fields, who is the director of counseling at Florida A&M University, for some community events. So, again, by all means, tap into those resources. Like you've mentioned, NAMI is a good resource. Our Tallahassee NAMI chapter is very involved with providing support groups, as you've already mentioned. So, NAMI is, I think, global, but definitely national. So, wherever you are in the country, there should be a NAMI affiliate or NAMI chapter, near wherever you are. So definitely check into them for the resources that they provide. Lisa said to Kia, thank you for not being afraid to talk to your friend. I provide mental health services, talk therapy, CBT, and solution focus. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. So we are about 11 minutes past the hour. The time is gone so fast, and I really don't like to go past 1 hour, but we have really kind of gotten into it, and I thank you for staying on longer. I do want to give an opportunity for you, Jordan, to provide some closing remarks and to share how folks can connect with you.
Yes, so if you're a person who is struggling with your mental health currently, or you have, I just really want to say that it does get better. Again, I think if I had to count, I'm sure I would have been dead dozens of times over. Um, but I'm so grateful that I had an opportunity to connect with people in treatment, people like Takia. You all are people that inspire me to keep going, and you give me a purpose to stay on this earth and really help others. And I just want to encourage you to keep going. If you're struggling and you need help, or you want to get connected to resources, definitely reach out to us. Our email is info at blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. Definitely check out our website, blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. We have a list of resources if you're looking for um, some awesome, awesome community resources that are run from people who look like us, for us, by us. We have tons and tons of lists. We definitely want you all to tap into resources if you're looking for community, because again, Taki and I feel like that's one of the main things that will really improve your mental health. So we just want you to know that you're not alone. You can always message us on Instagram. Black People Die by Suicide too. We're definitely here for you. We just want to get the word out about the organization because we feel like it's going to change lives for the better and hopefully save a lot of lives. Um, our mission really is to normalize the conversation about suicide in the Black community, provide resources to those who are looking for a community and looking for help, and of course, instill hope in those who would otherwise feel like suicide is the only way out. And if you are a Black person who's struggling, you are not alone. We appreciate you so much for just being here. And again, if you ever need to connect, definitely check us out. We would love to connect with you and provide you with resources or however we could possibly support you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've put the link to the podcast in the chat so folks can easily click on there and check it out, as well as y'all's resource page. So definitely you can check out the resources that are on Black People Die by Suicide to the website. So definitely y'all connect with Jordan, connect with Takia. They are on IG. That's how I found them. And so again, this is a very important topic. And I know, this time of year, folks can be in a bit of a funk, or the blues or what have you. One of the myths that I want to dispel right now is that talking about suicide causes people to die by suicide. No, it does not. Hopefully they will feel more comfortable, sharing, feeling like, hey, this is somebody that um, has some empathy towards my plight, and that maybe can I can connect with. Like you said, there's power in finding connection and finding your tribe. There's power in finding connection and finding your tribe. So definitely you want to do that. Um, Miss Lisa said, thank you for having this dialogue. Thank you, Lisa. Marlene, this was truly eye-opening. Thank you, Marlene. Tracy Gole, thank you. Such an important and a critical topic. Lend an ear, be compassionate, don't judge, be a safe
Mhm.
space. Yes, all of that, Tracy Gole. Every last bit of that. Hopefully, you all have found this to be helpful. If you did, let us know in the comments. For those of you who are new to the platform, I invite you to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on Facebook, well, follow us on Facebook, but subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we are here on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the focus again is on mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities. I'm encouraging us, admonishing us to get our checkup from the neck up, connect with a clinician of color. I actually have a clinician's list in the Big Bend area, Big Bend of Florida, Tallahassee region, that the Mental Health Council has put together. It's a working list, so if there are some folks that are missing, let us know, and we will get it revised. But we want us to connect with folks that look like us, that can relate
Mhm.
to our experiences as Black folks in America. And so representation matters, our lived experience matters. And it's not the easiest thing to be Black in America. I'm
Mhm.
gonna just say it like that. So yeah, Iris, she said, thank you for this conversation. Appreciate you, Iris, and your comments. Thank you so much. Brittany, thank you for being here. She said, hallelujah, me being transparent. I tried to take my life many times, in some ways by things I know took someone else's life, and God kept stopping it. God delivered me. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Yes, Brittany. Thank you so much for sharing your experience right now with us. And we are also very grateful and thankful that you
Yeah.
are alive and with us right now to tell the story. So keep surviving, keep thriving, Brittany. Keep it, keep going, keep going, keep going. I appreciate you being on the live, not only tonight, but in times past. So I thank you for that. Thank you for your transparency. And Marcus, I'm so glad this information is available nowadays. Yes, Marcus. And thank you for sharing your lived experience. And again, we are also glad that you are here with us, and, are here to tell your story too. So appreciate you,
Yes.
brother. Appreciate you. Well, Jordan, again, thank you for coming on here, the quiet one, as she has deemed herself. Listen, you brought the house down tonight, because you really shared your story, gave us some tips, some techniques, some things that can be useful. And we want to keep this conversation going, because there are folks that probably do feel isolated and feel like they're alone,
Yes.
and feel like they're the only ones, and we want them to know that they are not alone, and that there are people that care for them and want them to be here. One of my mantras is that we all are here with a purpose. We have gifts and talents that the world is waiting on, and we shouldn't be sitting on them. But we need to share them. So, we need you. We need you. We need you. We need you. So again, whether you are here with us right now, real time, or watching the real play, we hope that this information benefits you. We got Brother Frankel on from Tallahassee. He says, thank you so much for having this conversation. becoming more connected with cultural and ancestral practices has helped me tremendously in my adult life. Yes, Brother Frankel. Frankel and I garden together. We're part of a community garden in Tallahassee that actually grows and harvests food and gives it away to the community. And so that is, I think that's one of the practices that helps us both. I know being in that garden is therapy for me. I can only speak for myself, but it is very therapeutic. So, Brother Frank Hill, I appreciate you, your comments, and sharing that with us tonight. So, Mom said thank you, and one of my new mentees, Miss Trouble, the bell is on. She says she gives us a heart, and I appreciate this conversation. So, thank you for being on with us this evening. So, y'all, this is our last show for 2023. So we are, grateful for all of the shows that we have had in 2023. Gosh, I think we kicked off the year with our first international clinician on talking about dream therapy. Yes, in
Mm,
India. She's in India, 6 hours away, Dr. Hashish. And so I'm just, again, this has been a phenomenal year. We've had some really great conversations, but we have more to come. So, y'all get ready, get ready, get ready. We'll be on next week, and have a very safe rest of the week. Have a safe new year. And we look forward to seeing you next year with greater things. Enjoy, keep up the great work, and keep us posted with what you got going on so we can help
sure,
promote your great work. Okay.
I will. Thank you
All
all for everyone who tuned in, to everyone who shared their story. It means so much. You all just don't know. It's like fuel to the fire. But we really, really just want to help people and instill hope in others who would otherwise feel like that's the only way out. So I appreciate all of you. You'd have been anywhere tonight, but you were here with me. So I
That's
appreciate
right.
that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. All right, good people. Y'all, happy Kwanzaa, happy New Year, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.